hanging out with us this evening. Mr. Isom, I'm wondering if you'd lead us in the flag salute this evening. Thank you. Okay, a few checklist items. Welcome, everybody. If you have cell phones, please remember to turn them off or silence them. We are being live streamed by a camera, so when you speak, please, if you could step up to the podium and speak in the podium, that would be great. And board members, that includes us. If you have public comment, fill out the public comment forms that can be located at the front door and hand them to Debbie Ornelas. And public comment is taken for items not on the agenda. Each speaker is given 5 minutes. Public comment on agenda items is taken at the time of the item. Each speaker is given 5 minutes. And with that, I would like a motion for the approval of the agenda.
I so move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Can we have a report out from closed session?
Yes, the report is regarding item B12, public employee discipline, dismissal, and release. The following, there was a motion by Mulgard, seconded by Monpere, to adopt a resolution 2018-19 of non-reelection of probationary certificated employees and authorize the district superintendent or his or her designee to notify the employees listed on attachment I that they will not be reelected for the 1920 school year. The board took action. It was a roll call vote, 7-0. It was also moved by Fernandez, seconded by Barrett, to adopt a resolution to release temporary certificated employees and authorize the district superintendent or her designee to notify the employees listed on attachment A that they will be released at the end of the current school year. The vote was taken via roll call, and it was 7-0, and the notification is for 3 FTE temporary certificated employees. It was moved by Fernandez and seconded by Barrett to adopt a resolution to release temporary certificated employees. The board acted to authorize the district superintendent or designee to notify the temporary certificated employees pursuant to Education Code Section 44954A that the employees will be released from employment effective the date set forth in the resolution 2018-19. And that was taken roll call vote 7-0.
Thank you very much. Public comment, I have 2 public comment forms, Eric Summer and Susan Shear. And if you 2 would love to come up and teach us, that'd be great.
Good evening, board members. My name is Susan Schur, and I'm speaking tonight as a member of Climate Action Mendocino, which is a newly formed local group focusing on community climate issues. This is Eric Summer and from Walk and Bike Mendocino, and he'll be telling you a lot of the great stuff that Walk and Bike is doing. We're very well aware that you have a full agenda. We appreciate this time, and we promise that we won't exceed our allotted time. I just want to mention first that we're just giving you a very cursory, quick overview of one particular subject. If we had more time, we could go on for hours, but feel free to contact either of us if you want to discuss any of what we're bringing up tonight. So I assume you've all heard of Greta Thunberg, who's the Swedish teenage climate activist. And the message that is in that quote, that as far as the climate crisis, that we do need to indeed act as if our house is on fire. I don't think that's hyperbole or a radical notion. And what I want to emphasize is there are some things that we can do in our community, in our own backyards, to address this problem. Oh. So we wanted to speak to you because you and the district staff are the custodians of the health and well-being of our children. As we know, exposure to polluted air poses a higher health risk to children with developing lungs rather than adults. And a significant source of that bad air comes from the exhaust emitted from idling vehicle engines, i.e., drivers who keep their gasoline engines running when their vehicles are not moving. So decades ago, we recognized the serious effects of first and second and third-hand cigarette smoke. And as a society, we did something about that. With education and legal penalties, you wouldn't now, and no smoker would dream of smoking in a public place. So I'd like to urge you to take the attitude that we can have that same awareness about idling vehicles. Eric and I have taken tours of all the Ukiah Unified School District schools at dismissal time. And what we've observed has been very disturbing. If you multiply the numbers of cars lined up with their engines idling or the parents picking up their children times the numbers of schools, that's hundreds of cars with engines idling at any given time between about 2 o'clock and 3:15, or Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday at the pickup times. And this is, all these cars are emitting substantial amounts of carbon monoxide that our children are inhaling at very close range. And when I've talked to people, I found that a lot of drivers insist that when they keep their engines idling, they're actually saving gas as opposed to turning the cars on and off. But research has shown that that's really a myth. That's just not true. So, we're not pointing fingers at the schools. This is a problem all over. You've probably seen, as I have, people who, believe it or not, keep their engines running when they're grocery shopping, when they're online at the bank, at the post office, sitting in cars texting or making phone calls. But it is worse at the schools because there are so many cars doing it. So we're suggesting, and again, we don't have time to go into this in great detail tonight, but some very simple solutions, either that people simply turn their engines off when the car's standing still, or even easier, to just park in an adjacent parking lot or in the neighborhood and walk a block or two and greet their child and walk back to the car, and the car will be turned off the entire time. We've seen a lot of parents doing this already. And, from our observations, the parents who park and walk and greet the child get in and out a lot faster than the parents who get there early and line up and keep. I have 1 minute. Okay, thank you. I forgot to set my timer. Okay, one thing I wanted to, on a very positive note, you can see this is at Oak Manor. Oak Manor was really bad with the Purple Pipe project, and I know that is temporary, but there were 2 lines here. You'll see another slide with the line of cars on Oak Manor Drive, and there were about 55 cars with their engines running at that time. But I wanted to end on a positive note. This was a parent at Grace Hudson School who has actually 3 seats in that little cart, and she was picking up one of her children. That's with an electric motor. Okay, Eric will talk about some other things we're doing. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, thank you, and good evening, everyone. My name's Eric Sommer. Before I get started, I just want to say I know you've all had a busy afternoon already and have a full agenda to get to. So thank you for a few minutes of your time and attention. I work part-time for Ukiah Unified out at Redwood Valley Outdoor Education Project. I also work part-time for Walk and Bike Mendocino. And for those of you not familiar with Walk and Bike, we're a local nonprofit program. We advocate on behalf of pedestrians, cyclists, and motorists for safer, complete streets. We have a number of training and education programs, among them a 2nd grade pedestrian education program and a 4th grade bike and traffic safety program. We get into as many Ukiah area schools as we can every year. We also work at various schools throughout the county every year. I'm also the parent of a Ukiah Unified student who's been in our schools since he started kindergarten. So I'm here tonight to just express to you that I share all of the concerns brought up by Susan, and I agree with her 100%. She and I have met several times since last fall to talk about our shared concerns about this issue, but also to kind of strategize and brainstorm what we think could be done to address it. And more importantly, we've gone out and made a series of observations at schools throughout the district, particularly during morning drop-off and afternoon parent pickup. And what we found, you may already be aware of, there's a fair amount of congestion at every school, sometimes chaos. We witnessed 2 near accidents just in the observations we made, one with screeching brakes at Oak Manor before the Purple Pipe, and one with blaring horns and arms waving at drivers out front of Ukiah. Especially in the afternoon, we found a lot of vehicles lined up on our streets with their engines idling, like Susan talked about. And that's particularly problematic because some of our schools, those drivers start arriving 20 or 30 minutes before schools get out. They back up on our roads and they sit there with their engines idling. Before I talk briefly about what we think could be done to address that, I just want to take half a step back and let you know others have looked at this issue. Seattle Public Schools have put a lot of time and energy into looking at how they as a district can lower emissions, how they can design the best circulation patterns around some of their schools, and GASP. They've even done away with some of the drop-off and pickups at some of their schools. Parents park and walk up. I'm sorry, I forgot I have this. Back up. City of Denver Public Schools and their Environmental Health Department looked at this in depth, along with a consortium of other groups, among them the American Lung Association and the United States EPA. This was the EPA prior to 2016 for sure, but the EPA nonetheless. I have copies of that report. This report that I'll leave with Deb for any board member that's interested. I know we don't have time to get into all their findings. Among them, though, they had a lot more gadgets than Susan and I had. They had air quality monitors and traffic counters. They found significantly increased levels of carbon monoxide and other toxins in the air, particularly during those peak periods in the morning and the afternoon. They attributed them not just to car exhaust, but to idling vehicles. And that's air that our kids are breathing every day. Oak Park Unified School District down in Ventura County has a no idling policy, along with signs that are on most of their campuses throughout the district. So what can we do about it? How am I doing for time? We might have a policy in the near future on this problem. We do have signs right now. And last fall I approached the Director of Transportation, Gabe Sherman. Very busy guy, gracious with his time. We met. He said, as a district, we want to look at and do everything we can to lower emissions. He looked at our signs, said, I like your signs. Would even consider putting them up at some of the schools in certain places, but they need to be bilingual. So fair enough, that was an oversight on our part. Since then, Susan and I have been looking for homes, good homes for these signs. There's a couple out front of the Ukiah Co-op right now. Ukiah Mayor Maureen Mulheroon has one in her downtown office window. We'll find homes for a few more of these signs and then get some bilingual signs made and reapproach Gabe Sherman. Yeah. So my time's up. I know, thank you for your time on this important issue.
Thank you both.
I know.
Can you hang out for 1 second? We have one question.
Yeah.
I understand the rules. I know we can't engage in conversation, but I would like to ask that the no idle policy be back to the board at another date.
Could you repeat the rest of that? Sorry.
I'd like to request that the no idle policy be back to the board on a regularly agendized item.
Thank you. Thank you both.
All right, thank you.
All right. right, Mr. Paulin, I think we have a middle college report.
We are super excited to have our middle college staff here, and I see some students out there as well, and maybe a parent. Welcome to our meeting, and we're super excited to hear your report on progress so far. And to our two adventurous teachers, thank you guys so much for taking up this adventure and turning it into something great. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Ureli Macias, and I'm the assistant principal at Ukiah High School, and I've been working with Mr. Paulin on trying to provide some administrative oversight to middle college. So it's very exciting to be nearing our first year of completion. This is information that you guys probably have already seen at some time when we were just talking about middle college. But just a reminder, it's we do have a classroom at the Mendocino College campus. We have students that are taking both high school courses and college classes. The goal of the program is A through G completion, and we are providing a very supportive environment that's both academically challenging and supportive. So hopefully you'll hear that from our teachers and students tonight.
And again, this is review from the presentation we made when this program was being pitched. But some of the advantages that we've really been trying to focus on in this first year is making sure that there's academic support and social support and mentoring for our students. Most students, when they first start out and take a dual enrollment or a concurrent enrollment class at the college, or when they graduate high school and jump into college, they're diving into the deep end with very little support. And so this is an academic program that gives our kids a chance to really start experiencing college, ease into it, and as they increase the courses they're taking, have a lot of support. We've worked hard. We've had to change the master schedule at the semester because the college schedule changes, and keep tweaking it so it'll be flexible enough for our students to be able to take the college courses they need. And so we focused on that. And we're really excited to see, and they're going to talk about in just a minute, the number of courses and units our kids are taking. Because one of the goals is to help them get some college units done during high school and reduce the number of years that they're going to have to spend in college later. We're going to turn it over to these guys, and they're going to talk about how all of this is actually happening on the ground out at the middle college.
Hello, I'm Evan Willig. I'm one of the teachers. In the fall semester, you can see we had quite a few units taken by all of our students, ranging from an orientation class to calculus as a sophomore. Very impressive GPA. We accumulated it all together as one large group instead of a breakdown of what grades each student got, because that wouldn't be right. But this next, in the spring semester, they've upped the ante some more and have got a lot more freedom in being able to choose their classes. They've got art classes, they've got different science classes. A good group of students are taking American Sign Language and are very excited about it, which includes committing to classes after the normal school hours. And continuing on with high levels of math, we've got a couple students in chemistry, and medical terminology is another one that I've been really impressed by. That's one I haven't been able to help with, which is, but she's doing very well in the class. So. And coming up next is Mr. Van Beek. He's going to tell you about some of our stuff that the students told us today.
So I'm Casey Van Beek. I'm one of the other teachers down there at the college. So we just asked them today, we're like, hey, we got a presentation we're doing. What do you guys think of how we're doing out here? So we just pulled up some of these quotes if you want to read through a couple of them. They're pretty good. This is literally done today, and I was really impressed. I was really happy, and like sometimes you don't get that appreciation back that you think, and then you're like, wait a minute, they actually love this. Okay. All right. So yeah, so that was, that's one set of them. I don't know if you guys are getting a chance I could read a couple, or you can just read for a sec. not sure how the edits are on some of these, but that's all right.
You know, since we're on TV,
Yes.
it seems like it might be either better for you to read them, or do you focus on the screen? Can you?
And for the public, this presentation is attached to the agenda item too. Maybe Casey, you could just read one of the quotes.
Okay, sure. I would tell you that it is a fun and exciting program. It is easier to get work done, and help is easy to find. They should expect to have a better outlook on their classes. That's just a quote one of the kids had about what it's like. Yeah, I don't know. I was pretty proud of them. I got a couple students here that if there's, I don't know if sounds like you're not allowed to take questions, but if you had a question and you could.
That was
take
just
it.
for the public comments.
Oh, okay.
but on
Well, if you have any questions you'd like to ask some of the students. Okay.
Tell them what you think of the program.
Oh.
See if they have questions for you.
Okay, so
Just pretend it's like me asking.
my name is Olivia, and I am a student at the Ukiah Middle College. One of the aspects about this program I really appreciate is the one-on-one time you have with the teachers, because sometimes it's difficult understanding the material if you can't talk to the teacher about it. So that's a problem that I have, but it's a lot easier here.
I'm Madison, and I really, really love this program. I think that a lot of kids have opened up, and many people have become just like great students. And I know a lot of people have improved their grades, and I've learned so many life skills and so many great skills for college that I never would have learned if I didn't go here. And I really like it a lot. It's really low stress, and I get all my work done. It's really great, and our teachers are great too.
Awesome.
Thank you guys for the presentation, especially the young ladies. You guys, it's a little scary to stand up and speak in front of people, so really appreciate you coming out tonight. Megan.
I mean, I can ask this of one of the students. Can you tell me what your typical day is like? I lost track of how the schedule works. So do you just tell me what your day, like tomorrow's Thursday, tomorrow's Friday. What will happen tomorrow?
Tomorrow's Friday. Usually between days we have a study hall period so that people with their college classes can go and do their college class and not miss any class. And then Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we have our normal high school classes. So like tomorrow we would have English and math and PE. So.
And then Tuesdays and Thursdays you take the college courses?
Yeah. So the students that don't have a college class at that period, then we would do study hall, but that study hall is focused around your college class. So basically the whole day is catching up on your college classes and making sure that you have all your high school work done.
What college classes are you taking?
I'm taking Intro to Physical Therapy and Spanish 1 and 2. So I get my high school A through G requirements, and I plan to be a physical therapist in the future, so I get a little both
Awesome.
in that situation.
What college classes are you taking?
I'm taking chemistry right now. It's 5 units, so it's pretty tough, but I'll get through it.
And you do that on Tuesdays and Thursdays?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Trustee Arkin?
Yes, I had a couple of questions for the staff. How have your Wednesday meetings, are you able to get over to the high school in order to meet with the staff there? Are you doing that? There was some concern
Not-
somebody asked me.
Yeah, not as much as we would like to. It takes a little bit of time to get out of there, and we end up about halfway through the meetings most of the time.
So, but you do get to the
Yeah.
meetings, but maybe late?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of, like, since we also do the food service there, we have to take care of that, clean that up every day, and make sure the class is ready to go for the next day, because
Yeah.
there's a custodian comes in, but I don't even know if they mop the
I think
floor.
there's been talk of like maybe switching it to where we could have our PLC time up there, because we're trying to run a program, and it would be nice to have more time.
And then there was a concern of you not receiving email information that goes through regular high school, but you don't get it. It's someone asked that.
In the beginning of the year, I had misplaced some of the emails. Like I wasn't realizing what it was that we were receiving. When I first read it, it looked like it was just a repeat of the last one, so I didn't read it carefully enough.
And that got straightened out.
Yeah, that's gotten straightened out.
Okay. Thank you.
Trustee Montpere?
I wanted to ask the girls, so tell me, do you ever feel intimidated? Do you ever feel overwhelmed or scared, or like any person would in a new situation? But this is very different.
The first day was a little bit scary, but it's very open. Like, I think everyone's super comfortable there. I haven't had anyone tell me that they weren't comfortable. And I'm really comfortable there. I'm definitely more comfortable at the college than I ever was at the high school. And I know that's the same for a lot of kids there, too.
Yeah, I personally am someone who works better in smaller environments, so I don't feel as pressured to, like if I mess up on something, I don't feel that much pressure for it. But in the college classes, I think they're a little different because you're more mature and you have to act a certain way. But I feel like that helps us grow more as high schoolers to be less immature and just immature.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, just last question. I know you explained this, but I think I actually wasn't here during the original middle college presentation. So this first group are all sophomores, and next year they will be juniors, and you'll have a new crop of sophomores. Is that the intention, right? And then it just goes on to, so ideally there'll be 75 students at some point, roughly, or less?
Ideally, we would get to 30 students per cohort, so at a cap of 90. Yeah.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome to stay for the meeting, but please feel free to go if you'd like. We won't be hurt.
All right, let's move on to item E1. E1?
Penny, do you want to introduce this one?
So we have invited our financial advisor, Greg Isom, to talk about authorizing the exploration and feasibility survey of local school improvement bond measures. And Greg Isom is here to speak to that. Thank you.
And just to note, we're not asking the board to approve a contract tonight. That will come back at the March meeting.
Thank you. I know how to clear a room, so. So, Greg Isom, I've been working with the district since 2015. Excited to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to do the Pledge of Allegiance. I was thinking about it when I was sitting there. I've probably been to 500 school board meetings in the last 8 years, and that was the first time I've been asked. And I actually questioned it I'm like, is it the Pledge of Allegiance, or am I supposed to like the Star Spangled Banner? I was like, there's a slight delay, so.
I would have taken that too.
I was.
Greg, I was looking forward to that so much I can't even.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
I appreciate it. So, what I'm here to go over tonight, is this on the? Okay. I'm just going to talk a little bit about myself for about maybe 4 minutes for any board members that don't know who I am or what I've done for the district or what we do in general. And then I'll talk specifically about you guys. So, as the district's financial advisor, I assist the school district when it comes to generally debt, when it comes to school bonds, or if the district ever attempted to do something into the future with loans, which I don't necessarily recommend doing all the time. But that's what I assist the school district with. So some of my regional experience here on the bottom of page 2 shows the districts that we have assisted with school bonds. Your neighbors to the south of Cloverdale, your neighbors to the north at Southern Humboldt. We did 2 bonds for Round Valley Unified in the last 4 years. Did some bond refis for Point Arena. I assisted Willits after that was not me at Willits, but I was the one who helped Willits out after the fact. So I take great pride in that one. So these are some of the districts that we work with. And then on the next 2 pages in the super fine print, I put here all the districts that we have worked with throughout the state of California. The reason why I do this is not to say, wow, look how many I've done, but I like to show communities and school boards the types of districts that we have worked with, because every time I sometimes go to a school district, I always hear this phrase that, you know what, Greg, our community is unique. You are right, your community is unique. Every single community on this page and on this page are unique, okay? So there is nothing that I haven't come across, or my brother, or my person down in Southern California, or my person in the Central Valley, or my person on the coast. We have seen any type of drama, any types of politics, any types of good things, because you can see we have worked with districts up in Humboldt County. We have worked with districts in Imperial County, Shasta County, and I don't have this one. In 2014, we called it our Miracle on Ice Bond, which was in Siskiyou County, which I think is, that's Jefferson County to some. Santa Cruz, and everywhere in between. Okay, so lots of rural, lots of conservative, lots of liberal districts. So that's the reason I put this on here. And also just to show you, we've done bonds for $700,000 for a little single school district in the Central Valley in Tulare County. And then we do a bond for Oxnard High School District, Santa Monica, Malibu for $485 million. So there's never anyone too big. There's no one, everyone too small. We work with everyone throughout the state of California. So we do this more than anyone. We do about close to 50% of all successful bonds throughout the state of California. So that is me. If you have any questions about me, you can throw it out whenever you want to, and I'll answer them. But if not, I will talk about you guys right now. So generally how school bonds work for school districts, there's a lot of factors that go into it. Okay, the most important component to school bonds is the assessed valuation of the school district. We're talking finances now. I'll talk about politics. I'll talk about procedure after. But overall, when anyone talks about bonds, they say, well, how much am I paying? Didn't we already do bonds? When was the last time we did a bond? What are we currently paying? What's our bonding capacity? These are all the terms that the average person, maybe not even the average person, but some people will bring up. Okay? So on the top right-hand side of this box, that's the history of the district's bonds. So in 1997, the school district did a bond for $20 million, passed at 70%. In 2005, the district did a bond for $43 million and passed at 68%. A lot of people say, well, how much longer are we paying on these bonds? I always hear that question. Your 1997 bond is going to be officially paid off in 2021. Right around the corner. And your 2005 bond is going to be paid off in 2030. Okay? For a unified school district, as crazy as this sounds, your bond's going to be paid off pretty soon compared to some of your neighboring districts in Sonoma County or up north in Humboldt County. Okay? These districts are paying off their bonds into the 2040s, 2050s. So the second bullet point there says the district has no remaining authorization, meaning the district has sold all of its bonds. There's nothing, you don't have any bonds that voters said you can sell, and it's just sitting up on a shelf right now. You've sold it all. For any of the board members that were here in 2015, if you recall, we refinanced some of your outstanding bonds in 2015, saved taxpayers over $1 million.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No problem.
Tell me what a bond is.
Yes, excellent question. So what a school bond is, a bond is something that voters vote on, which gives the school district and school board the authority, meaning the authorization to sell up to the amount that voters said they would allow you to sell.
What are we selling?
So what a bond is, there's two different ways for school districts to access money. Okay, there's something called a parcel tax. A parcel tax is a tax that goes on every single person's property. It's a uniform rate. It doesn't matter the size. If it's big, it doesn't matter if it's small. It's the same amount per parcel. That can be used for teacher salaries. That can be used for programs. That can be used for hard copy books or technology. Okay? A school bond is a method for school districts to access money generally for facilities, for modernization, for renovation, for new construction. And in the year 2000, voters approved something called Proposition 39, which lowered the threshold from 2/3, which you need to get voter support, down to 55%. Okay? And within those boundaries, it also said that school districts can use bond money for fixtures furniture, and equipment. So you can actually use school bonds right now for technology needs, for whiteboards, for whatnot. You can use it for desks. You can use it for a whole variety of things. Okay? So how school bonds work is it goes to the voters. Voters say yes or no. And what they are doing is they are voting on whether or not they want to tax themselves a certain tax rate that applies to the assessed valuation of that person's property. Okay? And so the key word when you talk about bonds, it's assessed valuation, not market value. I kind of go on to the next page, but I'll just keep talking about it right now. So when you talk about assessed valuation, all right, we know the difference between assessed and market value. If not, I'll explain it, maybe for anyone that's watching. So market value is what is your home currently worth right now? What could you sell your property for? What could you sell your business for? What could you sell your winery for? Whatever. That's the market value. Assessed valuation is what is the official number on the county records, right? I always give the example, because I can use this personally. My parents, they've been living in the same house since 1974 in the East Bay in a community called Danville, California. The assessed valuation, they bought their home in 1974 for $68,000, okay? So Prop 13 comes into play, so which means that it doesn't get reassessed. They just get this little 2% bump every single year since, I think, 1979. So I think my parents' assessed valuation is about like $140,000 or something for their home. The market value of their home, they got super lucky. It wasn't like my dad had some awesome job. He just picked the right community. They were to sell their home right now, probably $1.5 million. That's the market value. Assessed valuation, $140. So when they vote for a school bond, the tax is based off of that $140,000, not the $1.5.
And are they paying the tax or somebody else paying the tax?
Property owners. So anyone that gets a property tax bill is responsible for paying for school bonds. Parcel taxes, same, it's whoever owns that property gets assessed that tax. So any person, so in that middle chart of the 4.374 number, 4.374 billion, that is all the taxable value within your school district boundaries. I'm sorry?
Of all the properties.
All the property, anything that has an assessment, from residential to businesses to farms to wineries to industrial. So like in the case of Cloverdale, your neighbor to your south, and this is fresh in my memory, how Cloverdale works is they have a very large taxpayer called the Geysers. The Geysers represents, I want to say, about 40% of the overall tax base in Cloverdale. So when they pass a bond and the tax rate is set, the Geysers is responsible for paying for 40% of the school bond debt. Okay? So how it works on the next level, so voters, I'm going to get to, this is like a bond 200 course. So how voters approve it, and district says, I want to sell money. I'm just going to go to this page. So let's use this as an example. So your tax base, based off of conservative calculations, can generate approximately $80 million towards facility improvements in the next 5 years. Okay? So how this works is, you can see in this category, this is Series A. Let's just use $27 million, $60 tax rate. $60 is the most that a unified school district can ask its voters to approve. Okay? $60 per 100,000 of assessed valuation. So you're going to sell 27 million because your voters approved 80 million. You guys are all excited. You're going to spend all this money on projects. There's this big, long process, about 2 to 3 months, to where the county treasurer is involved, tax collector, auditor, controller, and there is going to be a debt service schedule set up for the next 30 years. Let's just say the annual payments, just for basic math, are about $1 million. The tax collector is going to say, okay, I'm going to levy a tax because I got to pay back $1 million to these bondholders. So I'm going to levy a tax of every single property, a specific rate, based off of the calculations that we sent him, then he will levy this tax based off of a 3.5% assessed valuation growth rate. Okay? 3.5%, if you can see in this category, this box right here, shows your assessed valuation growth since 2004, year over year. You guys following me so far?
I'm like mostly there, but not totally.
Okay.
On the next one,
Yep.
are you going to talk about the series?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm getting just to the mechanics of county treasurer levying a tax and what that means to the everyday property owner.
So what I think it means to the everyday property owner is I would have to pay $45 per, let's say my property assessed value is $200,000, I would pay $90 a year.
Yep.
And we would get.
If it's a
60 million.
$45 tax rate, correct.
Right, and we would get 60 million.
Yep. That was easy.
The schools would get 60 million.
Right.
Community.
I would pay $90 a year, and the schools would get 60 million.
Correct.
Are we done? Is that
I can end it if you want me to. No. Let me go back to the, I'm joking a little bit. Let me go back to the previous page. Okay. So, right now, last bullet point on the right-hand side, this is what your combined tax rate is for your two previous bond measures. Okay? So right now, voters are paying a combined $138 per 100,000 of assessed valuation.
That's what I'm paying right now.
That's what you're paying right now. That's 17, 18. I don't have 18, 19, but it's going to be right around there. Okay? So right now in your tax bill, so if you have a $200,000 home, you're paying $276 a year that goes towards school bond debt. Okay? Bonding capacity, second bullet point at the very bottom. This is a number that the state of California gives to unified school districts. It gives them to all districts, but I'm specifically tailoring this to you guys. That says, the state of California says that you can put your community into debt at this exact moment based off of a formula that says, I'm going to take your $4.4 billion, multiply it by 2.5%, and I'm going to subtract out whatever outstanding principal debt you have from your old bonds, and it's going to give you this number of $61.3 million. The state says at this exact date right now, you could put your community into debt of that number. Okay? This number of $61.3 million is going to change every single year. Why? Because your assessed valuation of this 4.4 is going to either go up or go down. Historically, if you could tell in the past, it's probably going to go up. Even during the recession, you guys hardly had any bad growth. I mean, you had, like, if you were to go to Antioch or Stockton, these guys were dropping 30%, 20% during the recession. It was awful, okay? So you guys have very good growth rates, even during the recession. So your assessed valuation is going to continue to grow, even if it's 2% or 1%. So that $61.3 million is going to increase next year, year after, and then on top of that, you're also going to be paying off outstanding principal debt from your old bonds, which is going to continue to make this number grow higher and higher and higher. Okay? So when people say, well, what's my bonding capacity? Your bonding capacity is $61.3 million. Well, what can I ask my voters to approve for a bond? You can ask them to approve anything you want to. But the reality is you need to do something which makes financial sense for the district, financial sense for the taxpayers, political sense for the taxpayers as well, because you don't want to ask for some completely outrageous number, and then your community is never going to see it. So you want to give them a realistic plan that fits the parameters of the school district's needs, that fits with what your voters tell you they are willing to support. Most important component of the whole thing right there. That's why I give you different tax rates of 45, 50, 60. It's because I have no idea what your voters are willing to support. I forgot. Long time. 45, 50, 60, the maximum you can approve is $60, but maybe your community says, I don't want to do 60. I don't want to do 50. Maybe I'm willing to do $49.99, right? That's always a popular number for unified school districts for whatever reason. It sells. It's true. It's weird. So this is how it works. You're going to see Series A, Series B, Series C. What does Series A, Series B, Series C mean? A school district can sell bonds however it wants to. Normally, when you sell when a district your size passes a big bond, the IRS says that there are certain rules when it comes to selling bonds that you are not allowed to, like when LA Unified passes a bond for $7 billion, they cannot spend $7 billion. They could probably spend a couple $100 million every couple of years, right? It takes a lot of time to actually spend this type of money. So the IRS says that whatever bond amount that you sell, you typically have to spend it within a 3-year period. Okay? So you can see they're kind of spaced 2 to 3 years apart, right? Because you know what? It's going to be challenging, in my opinion, maybe not in your superintendent, but it's tough to spend $27 million. Penny would like to spend $27 million.
Our board would like
Your
to
board,
spend something.
it's challenging to spend this money, and I mean, just because of
And get the
contracts
construction
and
done
DSA, and I mean, everything gets stuck at the state, and then you only have so many hours during the summer that you can actually do projects, or you're gonna do it in the, so there's a whole slew of things, okay? So this is why it's kind of broken up into chunks, and also, the more that you break it up into chunks, the more money you can access. If you said, hey, Greg, I need more than $80 million, our facility plan says we have 90 million. You can easily make your bond program 90 million, because you can tack on another bond series, make it maybe 2027. By 2027, that allows your tax base to grow a little bit more, which gives you more capacity for bonds, and you can get your bond amount to 90 million if you wanted to, okay? So the purpose of what my job for you guys is to find the most appropriate bond program that makes sense for you, but one thing that makes sense for your community. And I'm going to talk about that in a second, unless you guys have any questions about this. Good? Okay. Okay, here's your voters. You have about 20,000 of them. The majority of your voters are Democrats. 60% of them vote by mail. And you have an older voting population. No surprise, right? I mean, you guys know what your community is. What does this mean to bond programs? On paper, these are good demographics, okay? See some smirking. Do I have something in my hair or no? Honestly, when it comes to school bonds, like when I see demographics like this, I mean, when we do bonds in Fresno or in Shasta or in Butte County, I mean, it's completely reversed, And if Butte County, Durham Unified, Rice Farm Country, if those guys can pass bonds, I'm sure Ukiah voters will do it. The only tricky part to your voter base is, it's the age of your voters. This is similar to West County and Sonoma County as well. I mean, it's just, just voters are getting a little bit older, more mature. And so how this works is, you got 30% of your voters, maybe close to 50% can say, I don't have kids in school anymore. Like, why do I want to support schools if I don't have, maybe my grandkids are there, I don't know. But generally what I have found in Mendocino County, Sonoma County, and Humboldt is that a lot of your senior citizens, they are just committed to paying for educational things. They're perfectly fine. The big selling point of school bonds help improve property values. If you have really good schools and families are looking to move into your community, they're going to look at, well, where are the best schools? That will raise property values, okay? So it's a little bit different education for senior citizens. Obviously, your voters 18 to 54, they're going to have a lot more buy-in, right? So when it comes to voters here, I don't know how your senior citizens are going to feel about a bond. That's the whole reason why we want to talk to them and figure out where they are. Yep.
Is there much of a correlation between the number of voters who are over 55 and what percentage of those voters might be Prop 13 households?
Sure. I mean, there's nothing, there's not a file that I can buy that shows it, but I mean, most senior citizens, unless you're, like Cloverdale is different, right? Because Cloverdale has that senior development. Del Webb, right? So if you're Del Webb, their property values are higher, right? But if you're in Ukiah and you're 65 and older, I'll bet you that at least, 60% of those senior citizens are pre-1979. So
that reduces your tax.
Correct.
Yeah,
which is going to make their tax rate, they're not going to be paying that much. I mean, the people that, so of all the surveys we've been conducting over the last couple of years, and as I said, I've probably done more than anyone in the state of California, the number one voter, which sometimes is the most tricky to get right now to vote yes on this, it's this 55 to 64-year-old group. The senior citizens a lot of times are kind of saying, hey, you know what, I've retired, I've got my life set up. The reality is this bond tax rate's not that much money for the average person compared to the overall tax bill, what people are paying on the property. It's this 55 to 64-year-old who are saying, I'm an empty nester, I'm looking to save money for retirement, I don't want to think about school, I'm done doing PTA, I'm done doing fundraisers, leave me alone. Because when we conduct voter surveys, we specifically set the parameters of a survey based off of your demographics. So, we're not going to set a survey that says, hey, contact only 18 to 24-year-old, Republicans, right? We're going to direct them and say, at least, a third of the voters surveyed have to be 65 or older. At least 20% need to be this age and this age. And the reason we do this is so that when I look at all the details of the results of the survey, I can tell you specifically how your senior 65 and older Democrats feel about this, how your senior Republicans feel about a bond measure, how your 55 to 64, how one of the questions we asked in the survey is, you know, do you currently have children in school? Have you ever had children in the school district, or have you never, no connection whatsoever? I want to know how all these voters feel. And this is crazy, but what we've been seeing lately is that senior citizens who have never had any connection, no students, are supporting it higher than the 55 to 64-year-old voter who doesn't have kids anymore. So someone who doesn't even have a connection is supporting it higher than this group. It's weird.
As your demographic, speaking on behalf of the 55 to 65-year-olds, I think it's a tricky argument, because what you have is, when I went to school in California, we actually paid taxes, and we had the pride of education, and we had the University of California and the CSU system. So now, even though I don't feel it, I'm paying much less in taxes than I used to. But I'm paying for college for my kids, and my parents didn't have to, because I went to the University of California. So I think it's a hard argument to make to me, because I promise I'll vote for it, because I'm paying twice then. I'm saying I have to pay for my own kids because the state of California now ranks 46th in the nation of states and how much we support kids per capita. So you're almost trying to get us twice, whereas hopefully by the time I'm 65, my children will be out of college.
Don't count
and I won't be helping them with student loans. But I think that's a complication to that argument, is that they're also paying for college.
No, exactly. I mean, that's the toughest bracket that we have seen in the last, when I was doing surveys from 2004 to 2010. It wasn't that way. It was almost always the senior citizens were your toughest crowd, and now it's that group. I mean, it doesn't matter what community you're in, up and down the state, whether you're liberal, if you're a conservative. That's the toughest demographic.
Is there also a question that seniors now realize, oh, good, I made it? There is still Social Security in the Social Security Trust Fund, and people who are 55 think maybe there's not going to be?
I mean, I don't ask that in my surveys, but that's probably something that goes into it. I mean, there's so many things that I can point to at 55 to 64, which, my sister's about to get into that bracket, and so she tells me all these things.
She's wonderful and beautiful still, too, isn't she?
Of course she is. Okay. Good on this page. Okay, voter turnout. So what's unique about the voter turnout of Ukiah Unified, when it comes to tax measures, no matter what you do in a community, there are good dates and there are bad dates. Okay. If you take a look historically, there are certain election dates that have I shouldn't say always, that have generally performed higher, where school districts have a higher winning percentage than other school dates in California. Presidential years are generally very good election dates for school districts looking to do bonds. Gubernatorial years are sometimes a complete crapshoot. Okay, and I'm going to ask a question. I want someone to answer why in a second. What's unique is when you take a look at these numbers, you can look at June of 10, 36%, June of 14, 27%, June of 18, a little bit higher, actually at 42%, June of 12, 32%. What is unique about June elections? What type of voter do you think is coming out in a June election with voter turnout this low?
Katie just said dedicated.
I didn't hear what? Dedicated. Who are the most dedicated voters?
The old people. Right.
If I had the laser pointer, I'd go right there. I do? I don't trust myself. I'll shoot myself in the eye. So low turnout is never necessarily a good thing for school districts, because who's your most conservative voter? Even though you are in a Democratic-leaning district, if your Democratic-leaning seniors are going to be more conservative than your 45 to 54-year-olds, right? And so in these low turnout elections, I mean, in June of 18, it was pretty low turnout. And we had some very big districts that normally performed very well on their school bonds historically. And they were barely squeaking by. I mean, Oxnard Union High School District, 56, 57%. Half Moon Bay, 55%. Right? And so, but then when you look at November elections, you know, November of 2018 was a fantastic election. You guys had 50% voter turnout for your community. This is, you know, and if you talk about, well, what was the major issue going on? You had, you know, the Democratic Party was going hog wild, getting anyone that they could to come out to vote. The Republican Party didn't really do much. That's a good thing when it talks to school taxes, right? The younger your voter is, the better it is generally for school districts. I'm not saying you're trying to be sneaky about it, but that's just the way that tax measures work, right? That's why the state of California, when they do any of their big tax measures, they throw them on November general elections, because that's when everyone comes out to vote. It's just this complete you know, it's a hodgepodge of everything. People are just voting yes like crazy, okay? So historically, you know, the best election date sometimes is higher turnout. But for you guys, I always say, when do you think, if you're to ask me, when do you think is the best time for Ukiah Unified to do a school bond measure?
March.
Well, you're saying March.
I just gave you the turnout.
Oh.
Oh.
We're gonna say, is this like a quiz?
I'm just being, I'm being a little flippant right now. The best time for you guys to do a school bond measure is when you're going to win.
Oh. Yeah.
That's cute. Okay? And I don't know when that is yet.
Oh, you don't? I thought you were gonna tell us it's November 2020. He needs more data.
No. I have a timeline for March of 2020.
Why
Okay?
March? Get it over with?
So, March of 2020 is the new primary for the president next year. It used to be June, and they moved it back to March. Historically, in 2004 it was in March, 2008 they moved it to February, 2012 they went back to June, 2016 they went to June, they moved it to March. When they were talking about, when Jerry Brown was talking about moving it to March, we were all wondering what is going on right now, because he made this big stink of, we didn't want to make it in June because it's less expensive for the state of California, it costs millions upon millions of dollars to do it. We were all sitting there going, okay, who's running? There's got to be someone in California that's running. When we first heard this, what a surprise. A couple months later, Kamala Harris says, I'm running for president. Okay? So odds are, the reason why there was a March primary is because the Democratic Party in California is really trying to get Kamala Harris a lot of energy behind her so that she can move forward into the presidential race. Okay? Is this a good date for school districts? Maybe. On paper, I would say it could be a great date. Normally when there's not a Republican, you know, incumbent, well, should not name him, but if no one's going to be challenging this Republic, do you think there's going to be a lot of money being spent in California for Donald J. Trump? No. There's going to be a lot of money towards Kamala Harris. There's going to be this big push to get all these young voters to come out and vote. There's probably going to be a big push. Okay? I think March of 2020 is a good date. It could be a great date. I think November of 2020, on paper, looks to be a great date, but no one knows what's going to happen into the future, right? And so I always say, be prepared. I think that's like the Boy Scout motto. I made it like tenderfoot. I was the worst Boy Scout ever. But I always say, be prepared. And the reason for that is, this date could be the greatest thing ever, and the last thing you want to do is say, you know what, on paper, Greg, it looks like November is a great election date for us. Let's wait till then. Well, there's a lot of things that could happen from March into November. There could be another big old recession. There could be some scandal. There could be some horrible tax measure on the November 2020 ballot saying we were going to repeal Prop 13. That would be a bad election date to be on, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. But what my job is, and when I work with school districts, it's to be able to tell you what I honestly think is the best election date for you. Okay, March of 2020, it's a year from today. This is a good starting point. So what I have here as a timeline are the tasks that I always say are important to do. So the very first task is prepare a project list / master plan. From my understanding, you guys already have a master plan, facilities master plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do we all agree that your district has facility needs?
Oh, no.
Yes.
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 Okay.
Major.
That's the most important thing. I mean, honestly, sometimes the prepare project list takes forever. The districts say, well, should I do it this way? Should I do it this way? You already have this master plan, tons of facility needs. Okay, I have here board meeting approved exploring the feasibility of a bond measure. What exploring means is just that. I never, ever want a school district to say, we are committing to doing a bond in March of 2020, or we are committing to doing a bond in November of 2020. No. What I want school boards to be able to say is, we're exploring this idea. Because that's all you're really doing. You don't know if you're going to do a bond until you have done the research, until you've talked to the community to figure out what they're willing to do and what they're willing to support. Okay? So what I have the board mean is, hey, all you're doing is you're taking the handcuffs off us to saying, go figure out if this is something our community wants. That's it. So what does that mean? Conduct a voter survey. Okay? I have voter survey being done in the month of March. I think the reason I have the month of March is because if you're considering March of 2020, you want to be in the same mindset that a voter would be a year from today, right? You don't want to do a survey right, when taxes are due. You don't want to do a survey during, November. You want to do a survey, in my opinion, as close as you can to the actual election date. So when people are going to be voting in the voter box, they're going to be someone in the same mindset that they are right now. Okay? If the survey comes back positive, I always say it's green light, red light, yellow light. Doesn't matter the order. But if your survey comes back pretty positive, I say let's go to the next step. The next step is speaking to people within your community. There are certain groups, there are certain elected officials, and saying, hey, we did a survey. The survey came back positive. This is what people said. They like these projects, they didn't like this project. They like this tax rate, they didn't like this tax rate. What do you key stakeholders think about this idea? You like this idea? Fantastic, move on. If some of the key stakeholders say, I don't like this at all, I think this is the worst thing you could ever do, why are you doing this right now? That's a big problem, and that's a time where sometimes you may pull the plug and say, we are not ready for March of 2020. If your survey comes back super negative, you are not ready for March of 2020. Maybe you're not ready for November of 2020. We have gone back to numerous school districts in my days where we said, hey, guess what, guys? Your community is not ready to support this. So let's just stop doing it right now. Anderson High School District, perfect example off the top of my head. Anderson and Shasta County did a survey for November of 2010. They're all super excited. Survey came back. It was okay. Talked to some city council members, talked to some of the fire chief, and they all said, don't like this idea right now. For whatever reason, didn't like the idea. So we said, okay, pull the plug. Let's think about it 2 years later. Fast forward 2 years later, did the same exact process. I guess people in Anderson thought the economy was doing better 2 years later. 5 percentage point swing. Talked to the key stakeholders. They said, hey, we're on board with this right now. Proceeded, was successful. It took them 2 years to be ready. Some districts, it takes them 6 months, 2 months, a year, who knows. I have districts have yet to do a bond they've been talking about for 7 years now, and their community is not ready. Okay? So that's the second step. That second step takes a long time. It says April to June. It's most likely going to go from April to November. Okay? There's going to be a board meeting where we present the survey results, and the purpose of the survey is not only just, so we're going to ask a bunch of questions about what voters think about the district. This is what I recommend. I know sometimes it's awkward to think about what voters really think about you guys, but it's super important. Okay? You want to know, because I always say, if voters like you and they trust you and they know or see that there's a need, they'll support you almost 100% of the time. Okay? But there are sometimes some awkward results when we get these surveys back. I remember for Healdsburg, they had been negative qualified for so many years, and even though they're now super rich, voters thought that they were doing a terrible job managing their money. And it's like, wait a second, we have 40% reserves right now. We're giving crazy raises, and yet people think that we're terrible with our money. Okay, well, we need to work around that because that's a bad sign, right? So we're going to ask questions about the district, some ideological questions. Then we're going to ask a bond question. We're going to ask some questions about a bunch of projects because we want to figure out, is there anything that your community doesn't like? Okay. Then we're going to ask about taxes because bonds aren't free, even though people sometimes think that they are. Ask questions about taxes. Then we're going to ask the bond question again. And we're going to say, now that you've heard all this information, projects, and you know that there's a cost, would you vote yes or would you vote no? Or you're undecided, or are you leaning yes or are you leaning no? Okay. And then once we get that information, that's going to be what's presented. Assuming everything looks great, we kind of fine-tune everything. We then go back to this original page. We say, okay, well, what do we really want the bond program to look like? Do we want it to be 4 series? Do we want this to go out this much? Do you want this much money? What's the tax rate going to be? And we're going to fine-tune this whole thing. And then we prepare the resolution where you put down all the bullet points of what you're going to spend all the money on. And then at November is when you guys, assuming everything went great, and assuming this is what you guys wanted to do, is where you'd actually vote on a bond. At this point, in my opinion, is the only time to where you're saying we are committing to doing a bond. Up until November, all you're doing is exploring, okay? And the ultimate goal, my goal for you guys is to be able to say, you're gonna marry your survey that looks positive with the public information outreach that looks positive. You put these together, put it in a resolution. So when someone says, what are you guys doing a bond for? You say, hey, all we're doing is allowing you guys to vote on something that you told us that you were willing to support. That way it takes a little bit of the political pressure off of you, off the superintendent, off Penny, off myself, off anyone. Because as I said, you're being transparent, you're trying to be as open as possible to talk to as many people as possible, and you're allowing people to vote on, once again, on something they told you they're willing to support. Then the rest is political stuff. Done. Sorry if that took too long.
Trustee Van Sant.
What should we be worried about besides it losing? Like, when have you seen this process go really badly?
When have I seen it go sideways?
Yeah, or just what should we be worried about besides not?
Me personally, I wouldn't be worried about any.
Us.
If I was in your shoes, I wouldn't be worried about anything. I mean, if you guys win, great. Sometimes the most challenging part is when you win, not when you lose. Because if you win, you're going to have $80 million or 60 or whatever the number is, and everyone's going to want this money now. And so you're going to have to try to manage expectations of the community and everyone's going to be saying, well, I want this project at this school and this project at this school. That's challenging. Mm-hmm. In my opinion, all this stuff, it's really easy. It's either we do the homework and your voters either say yes to you or no to you. Okay. Even districts that have lost, Fortuna Elementary, 2014, they got hammered, okay? The city did a citywide tax measure last second, school district is on the ballot, and then the city was just running their own campaign, doing everything that like if I told a district, whatever you do, don't do this, the city did all that and just absolutely crushed the school. They brought out all these anti-taxpayers. You know, there was big signs that say vote no on Measure N, which is the city, and then people started writing in the school bond after. They were dead. So they got like 44%. And then, was it 4 years later, they said, hey, now we want to go again. I think that, people have kind of realized we're not the same as the city. They went again, no opposition, no one cared, and they were successful. So as I said, some people get embarrassed by losing. Maybe, not me.
Good, because you're who's going to be to blame.
I know, if you lose, the blame can go on me, that's fine, but.
Gail has her.
Why was the city so mad?
Why was it so bad?
Why was the city so mad at
No, the city wasn't mad. The school district was mad at the city.
No, but why did they come out against it?
No, so the city did their own competing tax measure with the school district.
Right, but why would they have done that when they knew the other one was already on?
Because cities sometimes aren't the smartest when they do their tax measures.
Or they were just thinking they needed it more.
The city probably thought, hey, the school's going to win. I think we're going to win as well, even though they didn't do a survey. They didn't do anything. As I said, there's a lot of, you would think common sense would prevail a lot of the times, but it doesn't. So sometimes people just throw stuff up there because they think, oh, here's a tax measure. Of course our community's going to support us. We need police force. But if you don't talk to the right people ahead of time, like I think the chamber was like super upset by it. Everyone's just upset by the city measure. And so that thing went down, and I think it got like 39% or something. And then they even came back 2 years later and were successful when they actually did the right process, talked to the right people. So it's just timing. Gail?
When we were talking about this earlier, because the question was, the issue that was coming up was artificial turf. And I did some research of all the surrounding school districts because I was curious to know how they had improved their facilities. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that was wonderful was certain areas like Windsor. They did a huge thing that my question is, it wasn't just for the schools, and that was one of the ways they felt they were successful in getting it passed. It was something that seniors could use and the community could use. Is that a different kind of bond, or is that something that can be incorporated? Because we have a strong arts community who is very active in getting things passed. And, you know, I think if we, how do we decide, or is that what you do? You get a sense?
I assist with that, but you're also going to tell me, hey, what do you think about this idea for this project? And I can say, that's a great idea, or hey, I've seen this and that's a bad idea. Most things that are school and community use are great projects. You know, I've seen, I can't tell you how many districts I've seen that are school and community use for all-weather tracks. You know, I know there's a district in Sonoma County right now that's saying, hey, we are the only field, so everyone, all the soccer, you know, teams, they come and they use our field, so we want our bond to be for the fields as well. You know, we have a huge problem with all grass because, you know, it costs expensive for water. You know, you got gophers that are digging up all this stuff. So if we could do this, that'd be fantastic, and I know everyone would be behind it. It's a great project. You know, if you said, hey, what about a $40 million performing arts theater for school and community use, I'd say, that would be great for school and community use, but I think the rest of your community is not going to be happy with the $40 million performing arts center. You see what I'm saying? And so if it's just a little small project like a track or a field or a gymnasium, those generally are well received within the community, and I would almost strongly advise, if that is a project on your master plan, to include that language for school and community use. Because I think that gets buy-in.
And the other question is, some of these things that we might consider doing also require maintenance maybe 10 years later. I know, for example, the turf or anything you do. Can those costs be built, if you pass a bond, you could put some of that money aside so that in 10 years when things needed to be refreshed, the money could be used for that?
Correct.
Okay.
Any more questions? Thank you.
Great.
So we'll bring a contract to the next meeting, and as you know, we have a lot of facilities needs in our district. You've seen the master plan, and we talk about it at almost every meeting, so I'm excited to see what the community might support.
Definitely.
So if when we approve the contract, that's also saying go ahead with the survey? Is that,
Yes.
That's what it is? Okay. Great. Fun.
Sounds easy.
Great. Thank you. I'll make it very easy.
Thank you.
All right, item E2, I'm lost now. Oh. I'm opening a public hearing.
Any questions regarding Resolution 17, 2018-19?
I move approval of resolution 17. Oh, wait.
Close
the
it.
public hearing,
Yep,
sorry.
close your public hearing real quick.
This public hearing is closed.
I move approval of resolution number 17. The action to convey an easement to the city of Ukiah for public utility infrastructure purposes near the property line of Ukiah Elementary School.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right.
Hold on, Nicole, we have one more before you're up.
Resolution 15, is it another public hearing?
The public hearing will come at the next meeting.
Okay.
So we did we did this regarding Yokeo at our last meeting. So this is just resolution number 15 regarding easement at Yokeo. At the public hearing will take place at the next board meeting.
Thank you.
Motion.
I move approval of resolution 15 for the easement at
Well,
Oak
no, it's recommended we do it next time.
Of 16? Oh,
No, you got it,
No,
Zoe.
you're correct.
oh, crap.
Yes,
Okay.
16, not
So I do move approval of
resolution
resolution
15.
15.
I second approval, the motion to approve resolution number 15 regarding the easement at Oak Manor Elementary School.
We're just confused why we're approving something when we haven't had the public hearing.
Penny, do you want to explain this? This is a intricate legal, I asked the same question myself, actually. And the way this goes with easement granting, the board is actually, you're actually approving the resolution and conveying our intent to hold a public hearing.
Okay.
So, and we have to do notices in the newspaper and everything in between now and the public hearing.
I
So
withdraw my question.
That's great.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any other questions?
Which one is this?
This is item E3, resolution number 15 for Oak Manor.
Oh, okay.
You, j-
We didn't vote.
Oh, we didn't.
We have not voted.
This is.
We have a
to
motion and a
okay
second.
the public meeting for next time.
yes.
Correct. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Nicole, on item E4.
Yes, this is a resolution to reduce particular kinds of services, of certificated services, and the positions that we're eliminating for the following school year is 1 FTE of an eighth grade self-contained class and 1 FTE of teacher on special assignment STEM.
I move that we approve resolution 16.
16.
16.
Correct.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item F1, student expulsions. Is there a motion to expel student AA 2282019 for the spring semester of 2019 and this fall semester of the 2019-2020 school year?
I so move.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Thank you. Are there any opposed? Okay. Abstentions? Thank you. Is there a motion to suspend the expulsion of student BB 2282019 for the spring semester of 2019 and for this fall semester of the 2019-2020 school year?
I so move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Aye.
I vote no.
That is Carolyn and Ann.
Trustee Mulgard.
Trustee Mulgard, thank you. I'll get that.
Any abstentions?
And are there abstentions? Okay. We have the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, motion passes. All right, planning.
Yeah, don't we? I think we did it last time for some reason.
So our next, March 14th meeting, we've already
Okay.
stated was going to adjourn.
And is,
Oh, good. Who is it?
Is that-
all right, I have
Good. All right, fantastic. So we're done with that. Megan, yes.
is this the moment when you suggest agenda items for the future?
This is.
Okay, so I just wanted to reiterate that I would like to see a no idle policy brought back to the board for discussion and for approval. I did want to say that in front of the speakers, but I was planning on bringing it up at the appropriate time as well.
All right, and so we're still working on this, trying to make this part of the process better. And
I still have my pending compostable forks and trash.
We haven't forgotten about you.
Okay, thank you.
is there, without, we can discuss it if we need to, but is there general agreement that we want to bring this before the board or not? I'm sorry, bring trustee,
The idling policy.
comment?
The idling policy.
the idling policy, thank you.
It appeared to me as if a no idle policy is a bit of a no-brainer. Get it? No one's appreciating, okay.
Very good.
Thank you.
No, that
Because
was
we're just
cool.
asking people not to idle, and they'll either listen to us or not. I just felt to me fairly non-controversial.
Okay.
So So I felt like it could be brought without a great deal of hullabaloo. No hullabaloo.
Great, I agree, yes.
I just think that whenever you, I mean, I agree with you totally. I'm just curious who's going to enforce it.
Nobody, it's totally unenforceable.
So
Okay.
if it's an interest,
It's not totally unenforceable, you can have rules, I'm sure, on your campus.
I think
Yes,
these
you have
are,
rules
They
about
will-
not
I'm sure
leaving
they
your
will
car
address
parked,
that.
and nobody listens
excuse
to
me,
those either.
I think these are issues that we want to discuss when it's an agenda item. And it sounds like there's support for this to come to the agenda. Show of hands, all those that would like to see it on the agenda. Opposed? Okay, so, is this a super pressing issue, or
No,
can we ask?
no, not pressing, no hullabaloo.
All right,
Maybe we'll go forks and recycling, and then after that, idling.
Idling's probably less controversial, but however you feel best.
I'm just thinking about staff time
Yeah.
preparation and all
Right,
of that.
whatever makes sense to you. I would like a sign telling me to turn my car off. Otherwise, I will forget.
Our department does that.
Oh, it does it automatically? That's
And
cool.
it said that the salesman said by 2020, all new cars will be required to do it.
Oh, that's exciting.
No, we have many old cars, we have many old
Are
cars.
we just gonna discuss it, or are we asking the staff to bring us reports? Just, yeah, I mean, maybe you just wanna talk about it, right? No?
She wants us to bring forward a sample policy, is what I'm hearing.
Oh, is that what you're saying?
We are policymakers. It felt appropriate if there's a sample policy, we should discuss the policy and approve it or not approve it. I didn't want to make it a big deal.
Megan, that's what you mean?
Yes, that's what I mean.
Okay, thanks.
all right, thank you. The meeting's adjourned.
My gosh.